Welcome to the third lecture in this series of webinars that the LOETB have put together. They've really looked and got some great speakers on some really relevant and topical content as well. The series is called Future Proof Your Business. I know many of you are back for your third webinar. There's two more to follow after this week as well. Quick heads up on what they are. Next week we'll be joined by Andy Brophy. Andy is a well-known lean consultant, and actually many of the contributors to this series and many of you listening in have had the benefit of training through Andy as well, and he works with some of the biggest companies around the Midlands and across the country also. The theme of next week's lecture will be business process improvement, and the following week then on Wednesday the 21st of October we're going to look at how to measure business success. Big topic kind of given the year that we've all had, and here we go. We're in level 3 restrictions across the country again. Did we think we'd be back here? You know, maybe. Well, we are actually here, and from what we're hearing, it could have been a lot worse, and maybe we might face more restrictions. So it is, 2020 has been a year of a lot of change, and in some ways that kind of links to what we're going to talk about today. Today's webinar is all about resistance to change, and particularly in looking at digitalization of your business, because digital transformation is not just about technology, it is also about people and culture. Digitalization benefits for the company are accompanied by a lot of uncertainty though, and a fear of change, particularly for individuals. And as I say, 2020 has been a year of substantial change, seismic change in how we live our lives, how we do business, with a lot more change to come. But thankfully, there's experts here who have spent years researching and looking at this and developing processes and techniques for how to do it. So we're delighted to bring you that today. Our keynote speaker today is Fin Goulding. Fin is a global top 100 CIO, CTO with extensive digital and agile expertise. And now he's now a hands-on transformation practitioner. So Fin will be with us about maybe 1:10 to do about 20 minutes of his keynote. During the webinar, you can use the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen. Feel free, put your questions in there. After finish speaking, we'll put those questions to him. And then about 1:25 we'll have our second speaker. And it's a case study, and it's really worked so well for the last couple of weeks, having a local business really talking about their journey towards digitalization also. Today's speaker is Gerald McGee. He's Managing Director of Allwood Architectural Joinery in Portlaoise. Fantastic company, and I'm really looking forward to hearing Gerald's story a little bit later too. So to begin today, I'm going to invite Caroline Spallin from the LOETB to give us a 2-minute, Caroline, introduction into some of the services that the LOETB currently provide. Thank you. Caroline, you've fallen into the Zoom trap. You're on mute.
Okay. Laois and Offaly Education Training Board would like to welcome you all to this, the third webinar in the series. The webinars were aimed to hit on a series of topics pertaining to digitalisation. The aim was to walk us through topics such as cybersecurity, Internet of Things, big data, and lean project management. In simple terms, we wanted to focus on the everyday activities of businesses in the Laois Offaly region. In simple terms, these could be anything from Excel to payroll, getting your business online, customer service, automation, robotics, and overall lean project management. Laois and Offaly's employer engagement team works with employers and enterprises to support them in ensuring their businesses can keep a pace in an ever-changing environment. Laois and Offaly Education Training Board can provide access for employers to an existing suite of high-quality education opportunities through online learning, part-time and evening courses. What we do and what we'd like to do more of is engage with employers and companies to develop flexible, bespoke and tailored training solutions for their individual needs. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. These can be offered through traineeships, skills to advance programs and apprenticeships. Traineeships are full-time occupational skills development training models designed to provide flexible training solutions to identify needs of Irish industry and local businesses. They're sufficiently flexible that they can be tailored around each business's needs, what they have identified, where their training and skills gaps are. They can be developed and delivered in a time and that is suitable to the employees and the company. Skills to advance Through the Skills to Advance initiative, Laois and Offaly Education Training Board offers accredited training courses for employers across a variety of sectors to enhance and develop the skill set of their current employees. The Skills to Advance courses are funded and partially funded, and they are certified programs. Then we move on to apprenticeships, which I'm directly involved in also. The apprenticeship programs, which you are all well aware of for the craft industries, have now extended into professional services such as auctioneering and property services, accountancy technicians, software development and cybersecurity. There's also a new one in retail sales and recruitment executive. Laois and Offaly Education Training Board are committed to providing relevant courses that reflect the needs of industries in our region. We're asking employees to contact us and to engage with us to identify these skills gaps. So if your company or business or your sector has a training need which is not covered by any of the offerings that are available, please do contact us, as we can sit down and we can help develop these courses. So part of our plan is to engage with employers in the region, and this digital webinar series is part of that. So if you have any needs in relation to any of the topics discussed here or in any of the other webinars, please feel free to contact us. You can find out more information on LOETB.ie. Our skills are listed on fetchcourses.ie, and our contact numbers are available for anyone, and they'll be on a slide later in the webinar today. So thank you very much. Thank you, Ronan. Thank you, Fin, for joining us. Also, Jerry is on with us as well, and we look forward to the webinar and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Caroline, of course, played a big role in getting this webinar series off the ground and in the delivery of it as well. So thank you, Caroline. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our keynote speaker, Fin Goulding. In addition to, as I described him earlier on, a hands-on transformation practitioner, Fin is also a board member of Leaders of Tech. He's a Business Agility Institute speaker, an MBA lecturer. He's a fellow of the British Computer Society and the Irish Computer Society, as well as the CTO and co-founder of the Flow Academy. So Fin, for your speak, I'd like to hand over to you now, and you're about to sit back, enjoy and take notes.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to fire up my slides, and here we go. So I thought what I'd do is have also a little bit of fun in the afternoon, because it's it's nice and cold outside, and warm you up with some interesting information. So I've actually put a strapline to this, which is how to change your spot. So I'm going to talk a little bit how not only do you have issues with change, but how to sort of address some of those issues. As mentioned, I've been a CIO and a CTO, which means running big IT teams in different parts of the world, mostly in financial services in the first part of my career. And then I started doing some .com stuff with lastminute.com, Travelocity. And then I came back to Ireland in 2011 to be the CTO at paddypower.com. And because I'm originally from Cork, but we moved when I was very small, but got a lot of family here. And now I'm in my own company. I'm based in Dublin, and my colleague Hayden Shaughnessy, he's based in Kinsale. I'm the kind of IT guy, he's the business guy, and together we've sort of formed this ability to look at organizations and help them to transform. So what we do is we actually do full business transformations for organizations. We've worked with companies in New York and in Ohio and in Germany, whatever, all over the place. But recently, we've been helping companies fix or start a transformation, something we call a transformation sprint. And we've got a book coming out about that quite soon. So we write about transformation as well, and we use that experience that we've got to teach as well. So what is meant by resistance to change? Well, I thought I'd have a bit of fun here with the Kubler-Ross change curve. If you cast your mind back to maybe being dumped once in your relationships, and you get this sort of situation in psychology where you kind of say, this is not real, it's not happening. And then you get, well, there are plenty more fish in the sea. And then there's this stage where you get very angry, and eventually you kind of get to terms with it, you let go. You start to think about, well, what can I do to get out of this low that I'm in? You start searching for answers, you find somebody else, and you start to change. That's the curve, and it's used a lot, as I say, in psychology. Thinking, what's that going to do with business? Well, I did a very similar version of that curve in March when COVID hit, and started to look at this from a business point of view, how businesses were handling this change and not handling it, as it were. At first, there was a little bit of denial about this, and then remote working kicked in. Some companies started to sell things which are non-core assets in their organization, discounting their pricing, and even doing workforce reduction, which you kind of think where we are right now, a little bit at the bottom end of the curve. And what we need to be doing is looking at how to get out of that in the new year, and how we can actually start to think about, well, how can my organization change so I can stay in business, or I can increase my business? And some of the biggest businesses in the world actually came out of massive disruption. So the Airbnbs, etc., companies like that came in the last big disruption. So we should see more, hopefully, coming up soon. So I think some form of transformation is required, and I do think it's going to be very soon. But quickly, I thought I'd explain the different types, because sometimes there's some confusion around this. So a business transformation is when you're changing your entire operating model in response to what's happening in the market. So if you're in the travel sector or hospitality sector, you have to do something completely different because you've been so severely disrupted. An agile transformation is around, in my view, it's around an organization adopting new ways of working. It tends to be in the software development world, but it's actually branching out a little bit more now and moving away from some of the sort of stuffy ways that we used to have in terms of long meetings and things like that. And then digital transformation is actually putting into an organization technology or digital technology where it hasn't existed before. And I know that in this series, there's been some conversations around user experience and cybersecurity, and there's other stuff coming along as well. But this is where organizations are trying to actually become more relevant. So why change? Well, it could be that you're seeing an increase in cost, a lack of sales, the competition are taking over, you've got no new products or services, or there's a forced disruption of some sort. Very much like the pandemic, which is what we're seeing. And what's happening is that organizations are actually having to accelerate their digital transformation because of COVID. In fact, 66% of European companies said that they had really sped up their plans. And of those, 92% said, well, if they didn't transform, they would probably go out of business. So there's a lot of panic going on at the moment, trying to get these skills to move forward. And to be honest with you, digital transformation can be expensive, and they do go wrong. And this is, to be fair, this happens quite a lot. In fact, there's some number out there, around 70 to 80% of transformations go wrong. So what can you do? Well, I thought I would do my little top of the pops, my top 10 list for you. So number 10 is beware of expensive consultants. Quite often we see companies say, let's bring in some expertise. But unfortunately, what they do is they tend to not understand your context. They have a playbook. They're not bad people, but they're using something that they developed for some other organization. And it doesn't always work. And so that for us, this is the thing when we end up going into companies after the consultants have been in and fixing things. And it really is because it's lack of understanding, lack of knowledge of what the business needs. My number 9 is really thinking about transformation and change as like tuning your business as something that you keep doing. It's an ongoing activity, and focusing on small pain points rather than doing some massive big program. And that is number 8, which is what we call a lighthouse project, which is to take very small steps to approach your change, and not to bite off more than you can chew. And so we call this a lighthouse. We have maybe 1 or 2 people together in a particular working on an initiative, and that the others can actually observe and help support them on their way and have this team pioneer change within the organization. Number 7 is what I call understanding and living your signature processes. Every company has some form of key process that they use, whether it's the sales and marketing process or order fulfillment or whatever it happens to be. And as a business owner, if you can actually get in and start using that process just as your team does, you'll soon discover how much bureaucracy there is or how much waste there is. And fixing those processes, making those processes more relevant, will actually help your customer base. And number 6 is using what we call visual collective intelligence. So this is like a crime scene you can see here. And the crime scene, what the detectives do is actually visualize who all the different suspects are and who the victim was, and trying to make connections, etc. Visual ways of working in an organization can allow you to put out there a problem that you're trying to solve and actually get your team to help you, because they actually know what needs to change in your organization. It shouldn't all come down to yourself. It's a bit more controversial one. This is separating toxic people from your company. This is the buzzword for firing. Essentially, there are people in companies that are dragging the morale down, and they actually are disruptors in terms of not wanting to do any change. And for us, what we see whenever we go into a company, there's always someone like this, which is really being very negative and pulling the whole team back. And then we also get organizations to focus on new markets, to find new customers. This little table is a very small section of some analysis we did for an insurance company. In the insurance world, they very much look at their markets in very traditional ways, of maybe a single person, a married couple, retired, and that's how they focus their services and products in those segments. What we did was look at, well, are there other potential markets where you could find new customers? For instance, there's a lot of tech people here coming in to work at Google and Facebook, etc. Are there products and services that are related to them and their international needs? Or with independent females, we discovered also that they were not really addressing that need of that particular segment. And in fact, women in finance, it's one of those issues that's never really sort of been squared away. And this could be something disruptive for this company if they get the right products and services there. A little bit of lateral thinking. Number 3 is shiny, clean shoes. A little story, I was on a flight coming back once from a particular project I was working on, and I was sitting next to the chairman of a British bank, and he complimented my shoes because they were shiny. He said, I always do business with people with shiny shoes. It says a lot about the person. And that's the same with your website. Your website says a lot about your company. And I've seen some dreadful ones. And all you actually need in a website is just one really decent landing. The first page you come to is a sales page. It says exactly what you're trying to do, the services you're offering, and be very clear and concise there. You can also get somebody in the gig economy at this organization called Upwork. It's quite cheap to help you do that one page, a very simple thing that looks good and it's very clear with its call to action. And the same with LinkedIn. If you've got a business page, keep them up to date, keep them fresh, and add content if you can, just little comments and posts on a frequent basis. Number 2 is getting the gift of time. One of the things about entrepreneurs and people that are doing small businesses is that they actually start doing all the work themselves. And in reality, what you need to do is focus on getting the work done and not doing it yourself. That's delegating to team members if you've got them, or maybe considering a virtual assistant. I've got a friend who's a one-person company, and he's just hired a virtual assistant via Upwork. The virtual assistant is a lady that lives in Sligo, was an executive assistant, only wants to work 3 or 4 hours a week. It's very cheap and effective for him, and that person's agenda now is completely sorted out, and that person's put structure into his life. And the number 1 is to be brave. In today's climate, change is imperative. And I think that Ireland needs organizations to change, to transform, to start finding the new products and services, to be the next Airbnb or whatever it is, whatever we see that could come of value to people in their homes, and start to grow the economy. Anyway, some key takeaways here. I do feel that businesses need to change now more than ever. There's embracing change, but in a small and a constant way, I think is key to being future-proof. Don't put all the pressure on yourself. Involve the wider team. This collective group of people can help. And take these small steps approach to scaling down a big problem, a big challenge, and making it more consumable, but actually then skill the team up on that journey. But avoid big digital transformation programs like the plague. They fail. And the website, I'm really kind of passionate about this one thing that you can do, which is quite straightforward, to make your sales page look great. And be brave. I think Ireland Inc. needs you. And feel free to contact me and connect on LinkedIn or whatever. So we've had a couple of books out about flow, how work flows in your organization. Our new one about transformation is coming out next week, I think. And then Lighthouse Thinking, which is how to scale things down, is going to be more next year. But anyway, that's me, and I'm ready to take any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Finn. And again, people, I can take questions through the Q&A function there if you have any specific questions for Finn. But I think I'll put one to you first. You showed us the Kubler-Ross kind of graph of change. I noticed on it, like one of the axes is time. This year, certainly, time has been, it's non-existent for people because the scale and the scope at which people had to react to the changes brought about by forcing companies to go remote working. How much of a factor is that for people in terms of just not having the time to even get your head around what's required?
Yeah. I mean, it's different in different cases, I think, but primarily working from home should have given you more time because you don't have the commute anymore. That's one thing. But we find that people overstretch themselves. They work too hard and they start to become ineffective, and they context switch. It's like, I keep talking to a colleague of mine, do one task at a time, get it done. Don't try and do 3 or 4 things at the same time because it's very ineffective. But take time away, get out and walk. You really need to get out and walk and clear your head. And then you'll get back to focusing on the key things. But I do think that it's about prioritization. It's the old adage, you can't get away from those sort of things. You have to pick your battles, prioritize, and go after the big things.
And an example then of, you mentioned people avoid the kind of large scale digital change too quickly. What sort of traps are companies most likely to fall into in that? Is it looking at software, spending too much money on it without get a proper grasp or brief on what you require?
Yeah, you've got it in one more or less, which is that people see digital transformation as a project, but it's not. It's your business is changing, your operating model is changing, your processes are changing, your culture is changing. And you can't treat it as a project and start laying out all the milestones and say, we're going to start on this date, and in 1 year's time or 2 years' time, we're going to be finished. It's an ongoing exercise. And people have these huge projects which tend to get, they tend to fail, primarily because they're too big, but also sometimes because the sponsor leaves, like the boss of the company suddenly realizes that this thing's not going to be delivered, and they kind of escape and they move on to the next company. That's why we prefer doing things in very small steps. And in fact, our transformation sprint process is like 4 weeks to work out what you need to do and then start chipping away at it. Small project by small project, not a big thing.
Yeah, one of our speakers last week, Lee Feary from Grant Engineering, spoke about having almost like software or digital champions throughout the business, that it's not just resting with one person in a department. It's actually a cultural thing about bringing people on board with it. You mentioned toxic people, and I'm going to put to you, Irish people are very aware of what toxic employees, what toxic managers are like. We're less good at actually trying to deal with that problem.
Yeah.
What do you your opinion? Like, it's not a simple thing to acknowledge, particularly if that person is quite senior.
Yeah, not a simple thing. If I had more time, I could have got into a lot more about this. It's one of my favorite parts, because the thing you mentioned at the beginning is bringing people on the journey is very key. And what happens sometimes is that if you start to transform part of the organization and people are not involved in it, they can become toxic. They can become quite disruptive because they're not involved in the change. And that's one thing, is to involve them. We always find out one person in the company, and you find that everybody else says, oh, no, he or she's grand, don't worry, they'll be fine. That's just the way they are. They're a subject matter expert. And I know it's a difficult thing to do from a confrontational point of view, but you can get training on how to deal with this issue. There are ways of learning how to do it. And particularly, I think it's important because when that person moves on, it's almost like the clouds move away and everybody feels like lighter, and they think, and why didn't you do it sooner? And that's the thing that comes out. And there's a couple of times where I haven't done it in my organizations that I've worked at and I've regretted it. And I think you've got to do it, grasp the nettle.
Yeah, one attendee is wondering, how can change be brought about if it's not coming from the top or supported? I think I know the answer to that one, but I'll let you answer it, Finn.
Well, yeah, I mean, from the top is important because that's where the sponsorship's coming from. But then you switch from being this kind of leader, top-down manager, should we say, to becoming someone that's part of the team. So in other words, your job is to remove all the blockers, to provide the budget or the funding. It's not to design, and it's not to work out what needs to change. You've got to let the team do that. And that's the problem that you get. So when it's coming from the top, they tend to actually start to transform away then to something that's really not the issue, where the rest of the group knows what they need to do, and they just need that support from you at the top.
And Pauline has asked, what do you say would be the top 2 priorities in terms of digital transformation that will encourage managers and employees to change and to realize that actually this change will benefit them?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I mean, it's difficult because I think you've got two groups at the moment. You've got the groups that are trying to survive, so they're actually coming into this with a kind of like an open agenda to try and work out what they need to do in terms of new products or services. So everybody's in it together. But there are other traditional companies whereby it's just not too much of an effort to keep seeing the money rolling in. They don't seem to have the same pressure. So for us, it's more about working out what those sort of top 10 factors are holding you back as an organization, and agreeing that with your team, that top 10 issues that you might have gives you that kind of like springboard for trying to deal with them. If you can deal with those issues one by one small thing at a time, then the team sees that you've got some credibility in making the change happen. And that's when the motivation comes in.
And how important is it to educate the entire organization then on that change and that transformation plan that you might have? It's
partly the communication that what you often see in a big program is a communication stream, and the communication is, right, we're going to change the culture, we're going to do this, and really that changing the culture doesn't happen through a communication stream, and it doesn't happen by sending out stuff that people don't read. It's involving people in the change as much as you can. So when you do this little lighthouse project, we call it, the people that are in it are learning the new skills. They are beginning to work outside of their job descriptions if you allow them. You'll see some culture change happening, but that visibility, having the chance to see that team on a frequent basis, everybody seeing them, seeing how they're progressing, how they're fixing the blockers that they see, and they're getting rid of those things. Then other people come on that journey by living it with them vicariously, if you see what I mean.
And in your own opinion, how many digital transformation projects are actually successful?
It's a good question. Well, according to the stats, it's about 15%. So that's kind of low. I think it's, if you do break your work down into smaller sections and you pick things off piece by piece, you won't notice it so much because there'll be incremental changes. You have smaller failures, what we call limiting the blast radius. So one small thing goes wrong, you can fix it. When it's a big project that goes wrong, then you've got heads that roll and funding is cut and it all becomes very dramatic. But if you're taking a small steps approach, you expect to test and learn and to have some small failure as you go along and minimize it towards your end goal.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a big challenge, and we spoke last week as well about how some companies, maybe even to begin with, the biggest investment might be just in hardware and software, and that alone can be daunting for companies. I know you've said to our participants there as well, like, look at the pain points, identify them, and take it from there. Finn, thank you so much. I'll get you to stay on if that's okay. And I'm going to introduce our second speaker now, and we will have time at the end of the webinar also to put more questions to the panelists if you have any. And you can continue to put your questions in the Q&A function there. And thank you to everybody who has put questions up already. And we're delighted to put your questions to the panelists. So for our case study this week, we have Gerald McGee. He's the managing director of a fantastic company based in Portlaoise, Allwood Architectural Joinery. Check these guys out on LinkedIn or Facebook, and just to get a snapshot of some of the work that they do. They're specialists in the design and manufacture of bespoke joinery and furniture. They have their own in-house design team, full in-house production as well, and really another fantastic success story from the Midlands. Gerald is very passionate about digital transformation, and he's here to talk about their journey and to give some industry advice and hints and tips on how you can go about incorporating or bringing about your own digital transformation. Gerald, you're very welcome.
Good afternoon. Yes, so you have myself, Gerald McGee, my son Connor, who's also a director in the company. Good afternoon. I suppose to simplify it, looking back, I haven't met Finn before, but really enjoyed his overview. Wish he was here before we started the transformation, to be honest, because he sort of hit home on, I suppose, a lot of the issues we had when we went through the digital change process over the last couple of years. So to simplify it, I suppose, our company grew probably over 4 to 5 years from, let's say, a small staff to a staff of maybe 6 people.
Up to 42 now.
Up to 42 people now at this moment, including subcontractors now. years ago, we were a bigger company as well, and the recession hit us. We didn't have any digitization whatsoever. We got bigger again, and I suppose my experience realised with the team coming on board that how important it was. And to be honest with you, team is a thing that came up in Finn's and yourself all the time. I heard it coming up, team. So I suppose from my point of view, what happened was, you know, we created our management team as a group at a high level. We looked at what we had to do, and we set out goals to do it. We didn't know at that time that digitization was actually such a hurdle. I was lucky enough because my brother was involved in software, and he helped, I suppose, build Aircom's, I suppose, internal system for their organisation, and he spent a day with me trying to figure out a software that would be suitable for our company. He broke down what we required, a bit like probably what Fin does, and so we went away and we had a tick box situation of the proper software that was suitable to our company. We ended up with an American company that I spent a lot of time with in the evenings online, figuring out could they adapt the system to suit the European market. Now, that has developed over time. We brought it into the company. It's been very successful. I set up another business now running that's called Crow's Nest Global, and basically it's an ERP system for manufacturing that, I suppose, to simplify it, breaks down processes into small ingredients, and it's fully digitized through an app system and a log-on system. So we basically, every employee at the moment is clocked into our system, and they clock into tasks which are related to works orders. Now, I suppose we you know, Conor could give you an overview, I suppose, of the issues we had. But with the company itself, I suppose what we have is, outside the software of Crow's Nest, we have advanced CNC machinery. So all our machinery is CNC operated, and that comes, some of it is 5-axis, that comes from drawings in the office. So we're doing drawings in the office to process back to machines, and then we have people putting components on racks, and they're brought over to assembly areas. So both the machines and the people are part of the software, and the team is the people. So the people are the team within our company. Now, there is different level streams, different levels of implementation for the software and the process through the years. We have, I suppose, software design, IMOS, which is a drawing software. It's a German software that we use to draw our bespoke components. That's linked back into the software. So the materials and the purchasing and everything, it's all integrated into a software that, I suppose, it's SQL database, so it integrates with most account software, stroke drawing software. So everything is interconnected in a web. There's nothing broken. If you know, there's a pipeline to every area of our business. Then it's the same with I suppose, the IT. We have a good IT company on board that makes sure that we have the platform, and the network to make sure that that software doesn't let us down or causes any problems. We have app-based timesheets, so we have instant costs in front of us now. We always know what a project costs us right to the minute. So the works order process and the time goes into the project. So the project managers have a dashboard in front of them. They're able to see their projects in front of them right to the second of what their costs are. So we're never waiting on invoices to come in, process. We're never waiting on timesheets. The wages are automated now. We know exactly to the minute how much time goes into every single operation through our process. We have departmented our company. So we have like a drawing department, a machining department, a projects management department, assembly department, and a fitting department. Now that all sounds rosy, everything sounds great, but there was a huge learning curve involved in that. And I suppose if if I had experience, let's say, of Fin at the start, I think I probably would have implemented it quite slower. Now, luckily enough, we're one of the 15% that have made it work through pure teamwork and determination. And it does work, absolutely, but you have to plan it properly from the start, and you have to implement it slowly. And the big thing then is the team and the strings of teams and the understanding, the natural understanding of what this is all about. Why are we doing this? So we in the strings of information through management, we bring people in and we explain to them, okay, this is the reason why we're doing it. We need to make sure that we're pricing jobs in the future. We need to make sure that the capacity of our workshop through the system, that you're not having to do much overtime, that you can come in and do your work and do it at a reasonable pace and ease, that there's not extra hours required and additional times things going wrong. The company is strong and we're all a group and we're all working together. Yeah. Now I'm going to let Conor, I suppose, just jump in to give you some of the hurdles that we did have to call over. And I suppose, the pitfalls, I call them, the bumps in the road that I can remember so well from what Fin said as well. So Conor, if you don't mind jumping in.
Yeah, I suppose we made, like what Fin was going through there, we made the jump nearly all in one go. I suppose blindside, which was a big thing, but we didn't think it was a big thing at the time. We thought, oh, this new software looks great. If we implement this, it's going to run everything fine. When you jump straight into it, but obviously there was a few pitfalls along the way, and we made it work. We came across them. I suppose people was a big thing, like what Charlie said there. I suppose the older, more qualified lads were very set in their ways with processes, and they're used to getting very hands-on, and now they're seeing these new things through apps and softwares coming down at them, and they're like, why are we doing this? It's working already. We had to try and get them more involved and run the process through and kind of get to the end line and then show them, look, we're making your lives easier here, lads. And that's what the whole process is really about, was making everyone's lives easier. It wasn't about making more money, or it was more just to get the whole culture and the whole company working together and gelling together in a better way, so we can get our quality and our efficiencies all up. So that was probably the biggest hurdle. And then obviously through that, naturally people were working outside the system if they were supposed to be clocking into a task and doing stuff. If they weren't used to this for such a long time, secondary, they weren't doing this behind the scenes. The next thing, we were trying to keep an eye on the project costs and look at the processes and seeing where stuff is going missing through the production line because we grew so quickly. So it was very hard, and it took a lot of time to get that all to interconnect. And I suppose what we found, by slowly making improvements within each department as we went along, we were able to kind of get people that were coming down the line seeing, actually, yeah, this is coming to us quicker and better now and easier, and we're able to get the product out to the client. It's the same quality and the same with better efficiencies, and people are going home happier at the end of the day, and they're seeing that this whole thing is a team effort together to make their lives better within the work. I suppose another big thing with that as well is we found is if we were scheduled for the floor with capacities and hours back through trying to price our work, it looks all rosy in the system and you say, yeah, this job's going to be finished by Friday and that, but obviously in production and manufacturing, it's not just, it doesn't all go together just like a jigsaw sometimes, and there's always little problems that we come across. So we found people would see that it looks right in the system, but when it came to the end of the week, there might be issues or problems, and they were saying, well, but this isn't working now because look, we're supposed to be finished now. But we had to show them the bigger picture and show them how this is going to work over time. And now, even through COVID, while we were closed down, we spent a lot of time behind the scenes improving all the little things. And luckily, with the company we're based with in America, we were able to add in any extra features and any things that the team wanted below us. So we're taking suggestions from them, and they feel a part of this whole change, and that's what really helped us get over the line. And that's why now that we're back nearly stronger than ever, although there has been a few projects cancelled and stuff, but we're very busy at the moment. And now the team, now that we're back together, are just gelling together, and the whole process is working very efficiently and working better than ever now. So we're very lucky for that.
So one of I suppose, if I was totally honest with you, and I don't think it did come up in Finns, or it might have slightly, but one thing I did learn about it is you have to be so careful about culture. Culture is a huge thing here. So what actually happened was, and myself mainly, because I'm involved in the software now, so we're only starting to, we've taken on an engineer and we're implementing it in a couple of different companies at the moment. Some of these companies are in competition against my joinery company, but they know at the end of the day that the software development has come through a joinery company, and they're happy. And when they seen the software, they were delighted with the software. But one of the big things I've said to them that I've learned from it is culture, 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 because at the end of the day, we were actually able to analyze right to the minute how long it was taking to do something. We were getting that stick, let's call it. We were going through our production meetings, and our projects manager were going down on the floor and saying, why is that taking 2 hours when it's only supposed to take 1 hour? So one big change we did make on that is we decided, hold on a minute, this is what I call a line in the sand. So you're looking on a monthly or a 6 monthly basis, and you're trying to look and see who's running over, who's not running over. You keep that information to yourself unless it's required, but what you've got to do is do what you're always doing and fix the problem in front of you. It's only analytics and data, right? And that data and that analytics is going to be right if you're actually looking at the problem in front of you and fixing it, rather than going back to someone and saying, why is it taking so long? So culture is a huge one. I suppose having everybody on board as a team and making sure that you present it properly right from the start and have a good understanding what it's all about. Now, once you get over those hurdles, I can say, like, we're winning massive contracts now. We're booked in next year with big companies, and that's because of our quality and our efficiency. So digitalisation will absolutely, it's just a requirement for the future. But it's the process and the way you go about it. We can only give you advice of, don't let it take over. Just use it to understand your business more as a tool and keep everything organized, if you know what I'm saying. And processes more efficient, lean structures, but work on your culture at the same time. Was there anything else in that, Conor, I suppose you can add to it?
No, not really. I suppose the big thing for us then was, I suppose, we got on to, we work well with GMIT. We take a lot of their students on board as well. So we actually got on board with them to actually show them the software we're using now and show them the processes. So they're actually learning that now as a part of their final year. It's one on their curricular. So at least now when they're coming out of college, they're more in tune with the more lean processing and management that's happening now in real life. While we found a few years ago, they were coming out and they were very green to this whole style. So getting that digitalization through them from the start means when they're coming out of college, they're ready to come and jump into a process like this, and they're familiar, and it makes it easier then, as obviously our apprentices and our younger guys coming out of college, they're the future of our team, and that's how our company's going to go forward.
Fantastic. Conor and Jerry, it's been an absolute pleasure to listen to you, and I think there's loads of questions after coming in. Two quick things. Firstly, if there was a competition for best Zoom background, you've won by a country mile. It looks amazing, the boardroom you're in there, and you really are, you're showing, you're living this transformation as well. I thought what Jerry said there about, like, you've got all the analytics and the data, but it's all about the culture, that you don't just use the stats just to put people down or push them harder. You use it to interpret what's happening and find those pain points or pinch points. And it's brilliant to hear all that in action. And it's evident, you can see it just by listening to you, you can see it from me, how it goes. Do you mind asking, it's such a huge investment. Somebody's asked, the Crow's Nest software, is that just for the process, or does that take it right through to the fitting teams as well? Is it the entire duration of a project?
It's the entire duration of a project, right from, so it has everything, except it's not an accountant's software, so it does billing, if you know what I'm saying. It keeps an eye on let's say, retentions on contracts and billing, but it's an integratable software, as in what it does is it pushes the invoices back to, let's say, Sage line 50. Now we moved away from Sage to Zero, XERO, because it's an online system. So what it does is it punches across all the invoices into an account software automatically, and that account software then automatically, I suppose, integrates with it, and you can reconcile your accounts. So it does everything except for it's not an accountant's package, and it never claims to be.
And is it, I know you've mentioned how you're using it like in other kind of competitors actually are looking at the software and you're using it in GMIT. Is it something then that is customizable for other industries, other manufacturing and maybe supply and fit industries?
Absolutely. Anything with a manufacturing process, I would say, and I would say then really companies that are from, let's say, 8 employees upwards, I would say, are planning to grow. It's definitely a neat process. Now, if you're in, let's say, steelwork, yeah, it will work for it. If you were in welding, because it's a production process basically, and what it's all, I simplify it, right? And the way I simplify it to somebody is it does purchase all the processes the whole way through. It has a dashboard that keeps all your information, but it's only as good as the information that's going into it. Okay, and to simplify it, like it will work in any other company in their process, absolutely, and it's fantastic. It's great on the app side of things. Never lets you down. I suppose it links into the thing about it because it's SQL database. So what we can do from our IMOS software is we can actually, you know, when you're optimizing materials into sheets, like whether it's in metalwork or woodwork, you're working out how many sheets you can get. It can cross compare the purchase order system, what was purchased, and make sure when the drawings are then done. So the initial drawings might require materials on long lead, and you'd order them, and then when you go through the drawing process, it's able to put it back into the system to check and see, did you order enough materials for it? So it's able to do stock control. Yeah, so I can give you all the pointers of what it does, but I suppose, yes, it's not about the software's adaptability, it's about the people adapting to the software and making sure that they implement it on a stage basis, and it's done with a team.
Did you face any resistance to the change? Because I'm sure, like a lot of companies, you probably have people working with you for quite a long period of time, and it is a world away from the way they would have originally changed. So how did you overcome any resistance that might have been there, or any fear or uncertainty?
I think, you know, it's a process you have to keep working on. So, you know, I suppose going back on it, I think the guys that were with us for years, I would say we're the first ones that questioned this. What's this all about? Like, sure, I always filled in a timesheet and signed it. And I'm sort of saying, well, you know, at the end of the day that you've got Maggie in reception, or maybe Claire, and they're trying to do wages, they're trying to deal with phone calls. You're making their lives easier. As well as that, you've got everything in front of you on your phone. You're not going around with bits of paper. So you're explaining the process to them. And I think that's, if you just try and implement something without actually them understanding what it's going to do for them, there has to be some sort of value in it as well for the employees. So you're giving them the value points for them, and the value points will be your company's going to be more efficient. You're going to have plenty of work in front of you. You're not going to be worrying about your job for the future, and your work is going to be lined, and you're not going to have to do much overtime, because so there's some added value. And most of the time you'll find that people want to know what it's going to do for them as well as the company as a team.
I think you just touched on something really important there. Like you mentioned how even the people at front of house, by just freeing them up to spend more time answering the phones or dealing with customers, like, you know, sometimes people maybe overlook the whole suite of values that it brings when people have just more time to do their job even better. Thank you so much, guys. Finn, I think I'd like to just bring you in as well, just given your own experience and background, what you've just heard there. I think it's a really good case study, really great example of what's involved, and also that, like, there's a bit of work in it too, and it needs that persistence as well to sustain it.
I think it's fantastic to listen to it, and it sounds like it was a journey, a typical journey, but now you've seen the rewards from it, which is fantastic. And I think you have to keep you have to keep transforming and keep changing and keep improving as you go along. So, and it was really important, the points around culture, particularly because when you bring in a new system, people hear that as, oh, my job is going away, not that my job is going to be improved. So that involving them and making them understand what's going on is pretty key. But once you're there and once everyone's involved in it, then it becomes quite infectious. People see the benefits, and then everyone starts to suggest new changes and new improvements. And then you just go from better to better.
Yep.
Thank you, Finn. If anybody's any more questions, feel free to pop them up. So fun, but I think we've had a lot already. Jerry or Connor, would you like to add any closing statements, or are you happy enough?
I wonder if Finn's got more seats in his background than we have. I wonder how he manages.
Finn, Jerry, you said you've got more seats in the background than they do. How do you manage that?
I'm just on the dart. So, see, I miss traveling so much. I decided to use that. So.
Actually, we'll just ask one question, Jerry and Connor, just before we finish up, with what's happened in the last 7 months with people now, it's become second nature having webinars like this, having meetings on Zoom or Teams. Were you doing that pre the pandemic? And how is industry reacting? Are people beginning to see the real value in it? Whilst we might cut out the face-to-face forever, is this another source of great value for companies, do you think?
Yeah, we were lucky enough that we only had the boardroom we were actually just had it ready just in time. So when we opened back up, we had it here ready for this. And we were only doing a small few meetings before the lockdown. And I think now with the realization, a lot of our project managers now are here on the floor, getting more involved in work rather being in Dublin and Cork. And we're doing projects in Denmark and abroad as well. So now a lot of that downtime that you would be facing is all cut out, and you're getting through the same amount of work, and these meetings are just as kind of fructious as normally going face to face. Obviously, when you're meeting new clients and stuff like that, it's very important to meet them face to face. But I think there's a lot of stuff that can be done here in house that's being done now, and it's helping us definitely.
You hit the nail on the head there, Ron, and you said you've more time for the customer. Back like with digitalisation, because I mean, that's who we're all working for at the end of the day, as a customer. And if you can actually look, whether they're coming down or whether they're on Zoom, yeah, it's nice. Face to face is nice, but Zoom is reality at the moment, and that's the nearest thing we're going to get at the moment to meeting a client and them feeling comfortable with you and having, so all the technology. Digitization, like we've also put in a architectural collaboration space here for 3D visual, so our architects are able to come down and see a reception desk and walk around it in reality space. We're in the process where we nearly had that ready, and we went back to the drawing board with it. It's in next door here because we're not in a hurry with it now, so we want to actually make the experience that much better, because if we said to an architect now at the moment, come down, they can come down. But one thing they can do is they can talk straight in front of us here. And it's important to get the quality of that right too. The quality of the system is so important. The quality of the software, and you study the software and what you're going to do, your overall plan and the team integration and the culture. They're the main topics I'd say that you need to look at.
Brilliant. Jerry and Connor from Allwood Architectural Joinery, thank you so much, and Fin Goulding as well. Thank you all for your input today. I think it's going to be a very popular podcast, this one too, and it's continuing on in that theme. We started the first week speaking about customer experience, and that's exactly what Jerry has finished off talking about there. It's what matters and what pays the bills and the wages at the end of the day. So again, thank you all so much. Thank you to all our attendees for joining us today. It's great to see so many people take an interest in this series of webinars, and I think the case studies are really making a huge difference as well, to see people living out these strategies and these technological developments and getting the stories from the ground. On your screen at a minute, you'll see contact details for loads of people at the LOETB. If you're looking for stuff around apprenticeship services, traineeships, skills to advance, the numbers are there. LOETB.ie is the web address if you want to find out more information about any of these services. Next week, Same time, we'll be joined by Andy Brophy. Andy is an absolute expert in terms of all things lean and has worked with so many companies around the Midlands and beyond. Andy will give a keynote speech on business process improvements, really following on again from what we've spoken about here today and taking a kind of lean lens on that also. To finish out then on Wednesday, the 21st of October, we have Muriel Foley speaking about how to measure business success, and our keynote speaker that day will be Holly Breen from Honest Roots. So without further ado, I think it's time to say goodbye to you all. I look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday. Don't forget to tell your family, your friends and your colleagues about the webinar series. And as Caroline said at the start, there will be a recording of this made available on LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the various social media channels. Keep an eye out for that. And thank you all for attending, and see you all soon, hopefully. Goodbye.